scary Florida fact. In Florida, there's a place called Dead Zone in the Gulf of Mexico, a massive underwater area where oxygen levels drop so low that almost no sea life can survive. It grows bigger every summer due to pollution runoff and rising ocean temperatures. What's truly eerie is that boats passing over it have reported strange malfunctions, like compasses spinning wildly or electronics glitching, similar to stories from the Bermuda Triangle. And here's the kicker. It's creeping closer to the Florida coastline every year. The air in Sandbridge carried a heavy, humid scent of salt and decay, a familiar perfume of coastal towns past their prime. I'd booked a room at the Anchor Inn, a place chosen more for its proximity to a half-decent fishing pier than its online reviews, which oscillated between charmingly retro and should be condemned. I was on a solo trip, a much-needed escape from the relentless hum of city life, and figured a place with flickering neon and peeling paint was just what the doctor ordered for a little quiet introspection. My room, 212, was on the second floor, overlooking a patch of sandy scrub where gulls often congregated to squabble over discarded fries. It was exactly as described, functional, slightly musty, with a bed that threatened a chronic backache and a television that probably predated the internet. I'd unpacked my minimal belongings, strung up a damp towel, and settled in with a lukewarm beer, contemplating the evening's fishing prospects when the first knock came. A light, hesitant rap. I frowned. I hadn't ordered anything. Probably a mix-up. I opened the door to a young man in a stained white polo, balancing a tray with a steaming plate under a silver dome. "Room service for 312?" he asked, his voice reedy. No," I said, gesturing to my door number. "This is 212. He blinked, then squinted at a small slip of paper on his tray. "Oh, my apologies, sir. Must have misread it." He gave an awkward shrug and shuffled off, muttering about new glasses. I thought nothing of it. A simple human error. 20 minutes later, just as I was debating whether to brave the TV's fuzzy reception, there was another knock. This one was more confident, a solid rap, rap, rap. I opened it. This time, an older woman with a severe bun and an equally severe expression stood there, holding a tall glass of what looked like a bright green smoothie and a small plate of biscotti. "Your order for 312, she stated, her voice flat. I stared at the green concoction. Again? This is 212. I haven't ordered anything. Her eyebrows barely twitched. The order clearly states 312. Are you certain you are in the correct room? Yes, I'm certain, I replied, a hint of annoyance creeping into my voice. My key card says 212 and the number on the door says 212. There must be some mistake in the kitchen. She simply nodded once, a curt movement, and turned on her heel, disappearing down the hallway without another word. Now, this was starting to get weird. 2 deliveries in quick succession, both for a different room number. I picked up the old-fashioned rotary phone and dialed the front desk. "Front desk, this is Brenda." Her voice was cheerful, almost aggressively so. "Hi, Brenda. This is Mark Davis, room 212. I've had 2 room service deliveries for room 3. 1-2 show up at my door in the last half hour. Just wanted to let you know there seems to be a mix-up on your end." There was a beat of silence. "Room 312, sir?" she repeated, her cheerfulness suddenly deflating. "Yes, a smoothie and some biscotti just now, and some kind of covered plate earlier." Another pause, longer this time. "Sir, there is no room 312 at the Anchor Inn." My grip tightened on the receiver. "What do you mean, there's no room 312? Both delivery people specifically said 312 inches. "Well, sir, they shouldn't have," Brenda said, her voice now tight and professional. "This motel only has 2 floors. The highest room number we have is 220. There are no rooms on a 3rd floor." A chill, far colder than the AC in my room, snaked its way up my spine. "Are you sure? Maybe it's a new section or something?" "Positive, Mr. Davis. Been working here 17 years. Number 312. Never has been." Her voice was firm, leaving no room for doubt. "I'll speak with the kitchen staff immediately and make sure this doesn't happen again. We apologize for the inconvenience. Right, thanks, Brenda." I hung up, the cheap plastic phone feeling heavy in my hand. No room 312. But 2 people had brought orders specifically for it. And they had ordered something. Someone had called in an order for a room that didn't exist, or rather, a room that didn't exist here. My mind raced. Was it a prank? Someone playing games with the new guy? But the delivery people hadn't seemed like they were in on a joke. They were just doing their job, delivering to the number on the slip. I decided to go down to the lobby. The air in the hallway felt suddenly heavier, the silence amplifying the distant hum of the ice machine. The old carpet squished under my feet. When I reached the front desk, Brenda was on the phone, her voice hushed. She glanced up, saw me, and her eyes widened slightly before she quickly ended the call. "Mr. Davis, I just spoke with the kitchen," she began, her forced cheerfulness back in place. "They said no orders were placed for room 312 at all today. They don't know what you're talking about." My jaw dropped. "What? That's impossible. I just saw them. The woman with the bun, the young guy." Brenda offered a sympathetic but firm smile. "Sir, I assure you, there's no record. Perhaps you were mistaken?" "Mistaken?" I could feel my face flush. 2 separate people, 2 separate orders, both came to my door for a room that doesn't exist, and your kitchen claims no one ordered it? That sounds like I'm not mistaken. It sounds like something very strange is going on." She shrugged slightly, a gesture that conveyed both dismissal and a subtle hint of "not my problem." "Well, I apologize, Mr. Davis. I can offer you a complimentary breakfast voucher for the trouble." I stared at her, feeling a knot of unease tighten in my stomach. She was either incredibly forgetful, covering something up, or genuinely believed I was delusional. I didn't press the issue. There was no point. I took the voucher, though I knew I wouldn't use it. Back in my room, the silence was no longer peaceful. It was oppressive. I kept glancing at the door, half expecting another knock. Who had placed those orders? Why were they sent to my room? And where was room 312? I grabbed my phone and started searching. The Anchor Inn, Sandbridge, history. Old newspaper articles popped up. Local history sites. Nothing about a 3rd floor or a room 312. But then I found something, buried deep in an archived forum about local legends and ghost stories. It was a thread from 20 years ago, someone asking about the old Anchor Inn. A few posts mentioned strange occurrences, and then a chilling comment. They say a guest once checked into 312, but it was just a closet. He went missing. Left all his belongings but vanished. The hotel tried to cover it up, walled it off, renumbered everything, said it never existed. My blood ran cold. A closet? Walled off? I looked around my room. It felt smaller now, the walls closing in. I walked to the wall connecting my room to the next. I tapped on it. Solid. But what about the other side? The hallway. I opened my door, peering out. The hallway stretched left and right, identical doors on either side. My gaze drifted up. The ceiling was low, just above the door frames. There was definitely no 3rd floor. But then my eyes caught something. At the very end of the hallway, past room 220, where the hall should have ended in a solid wall, there was a faint seam. a barely perceptible line in the wallpaper, running vertically from floor to ceiling, and directly across from it, on the opposite wall, was another, fainter line. They seemed to delineate a space, a phantom doorway where there should have been none. My heart hammered against my ribs. Was that it? Was that where 312 had been? Walled off, painted over, meant to be forgotten. I backed away from the door, a cold dread washing over me. I wasn't just getting wrong deliveries. I was a witness to echoes. Someone, something, was still in that walled-off space, still ordering green smoothies and biscotti, still living out a phantom existence, and somehow the lines of reality were blurring, directing its requests to the nearest available living room. Mine. I grabbed my bag, my fishing rod, everything I owned. I didn't care about the money I'd paid for the room. I didn't care about the introspection. I just needed out. I walked past the phantom seam in the wall, not daring to look directly at it, and descended the stairs. Brenda looked up as I approached the desk, her smile still unnervingly bright. "Checking out so soon, Mr. Davis?" "Yes," I said, my voice hoarse. Something came up. As I stepped out into the humid night, the neon sign of the Anchor Inn flickered, casting a sickly green glow on the pavement. I didn't look back. But as I drove away, I swore I saw a faint light in a window on the 3rd floor, a floor that, according to Brenda, didn't exist. And in the fleeting moment before it vanished, it looked suspiciously like the pale glow of a television screen. The world under the old King Street Bridge had its own peculiar rhythm. The concrete overhead groaned with the passing cars, a low, constant drone that vibrated through the worn asphalt and into the pilings. Below, the creek murmured, a dark, brackish ribbon twisting through the tangled mangroves. It was my spot, my sanctuary, especially late at night when the town finally went quiet, and the only company I had was the hum of the bridge and the slap of the water against the muddy bank. I was 15, restless and hooked on the quiet solitude of night fishing. My dad had taught me how to cast, how to bait a hook with shrimp, how to be patient. Tonight, the air was thick and heavy, promising rain, but for now it was just muggy and still. My cheap LED headlamp cut a narrow beam through the inky black, illuminating my tackle box and the gentle ripples where my line disappeared. I'd been there for maybe an hour, already caught a couple of decent croakers when I first saw him. A flicker of movement in the dense mangroves on the far bank, where the water deepened and the roots formed an impenetrable maze. My light swung over, and then I froze. He was standing perfectly still, waist deep in the murky water, wearing dark waders and a wide-brimmed hat that obscured his face in shadow. He held a long fishing rod, the tip dipped into the water, unmoving. He didn't seem to be casting or reeling or doing anything at all, just standing, like a statue carved from the night itself. A night fisherman. Nothing too unusual, I reasoned. People fished these parts at all hours. But the stillness was unnerving. Most fishermen shifted, rebaited, adjusted. This guy was utterly motionless. He could have been a mannequin. I kept my light on him for a beat too long, then felt a prickle of discomfort and snapped it back to my line. I cast again, trying to ignore him, but I kept glancing up. He hadn't moved. The tide was low, exposing the gnarled roots of the mangroves, and he was clearly standing on solid ground just in the water. I fished for another hour, not catching anything else. When I finally packed up, I looked back. He was still there, a dark silhouette against the barely lighter sky, rod still dipped, still unnervingly still. I shivered, chalking it up to the late hour and the impending storm. The next night, the weather held. I couldn't resist the pull of the creek, and besides, I'd left a half-eaten bag of chips in my tackle box. I pedaled my bike down the dirt path, the familiar drone of the bridge welcoming me back. The tide was higher tonight, much higher. The water lapped at the edge of the bank where I usually set up, and the mangrove roots were almost completely submerged. I cast my line, the little lead sinker splashing gently into the dark water. After a few minutes, a strange urge made me lift my headlamp. I swept it across the far bank just to check. And then I saw him. He was in the exact same spot. Same dark waders, same wide-brimmed hat, same motionless posture, rod dipped into the water. But the tide was at least 1.5 feet higher than it had been last night. I knew this creek. At this tide, the water would be chest-deep where he stood, possibly even higher. No one, absolutely no one, could stand there on firm ground. The land was entirely submerged. My breath hitched, my light beam quivered. Was he floating? But he looked so solid, so planted. It was like he was standing on an invisible platform just beneath the surface. My logical brain scrambled for explanations. Maybe he was on a small boat I couldn't see. No, the water was too shallow for a boat to sit completely still like that, especially in the gentle current. Maybe he was incredibly tall. Unlikely to be that tall. I watched him, my heart thumping a frantic rhythm against my ribs. He didn't move a muscle, didn't twitch, didn't breathe visibly, just stood there, eternally fishing for nothing. The silence of the creek seemed to press in, amplifying the faint chirping of crickets and the distant croak of a frog. I suddenly felt incredibly exposed. My small headlamp, a beacon in the darkness. I wanted to turn it off, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from him. A terrifying thought began to form. If he wasn't standing on anything, then what was he doing? Was he wading through mud and roots, impossibly deep? Or was he not standing at all? I kept my gaze fixed, my eyes straining, trying to make out any detail under the brim of his hat. Nothing. Just an inky shadow where a face should be. The next night, I told myself I wouldn't go, but the image of him standing there impossibly had burrowed into my mind. I couldn't sleep. The curiosity, tinged with a cold dread, pulled me back like a magnet. This time, I took my dad's stronger flashlight, the one that cut a powerful beam through the darkest night. I approached the bridge cautiously, my bike rattling on the uneven path. The air was cool, a front had moved through, and the tide was almost fully out, lower than I'd ever seen it. The mud flats were exposed, slimy and glistening under the faint moonlight. I set my gear down, took a deep breath, and clicked on the flashlight. The powerful beam sliced through the darkness, across the creek, and landed on the mangroves. He was there, in the exact same spot. But now, with the tide so low, the ground where he stood should have been a muddy, exposed bank. Instead, he was knee-deep in water. Water that shouldn't have been there. It was like a perfectly circular pool had formed around him, defying the laws of the tide. The surrounding mud flats were bone dry, but around him the water swirled faintly, dark and still. My hands began to tremble. This wasn't some trick of light or an optical illusion. This was impossible. This was wrong. He was either creating his own personal pool or he was not subject to the tides. I raised the flashlight higher, my hand shaking so badly the beam danced. "Hey!" I yelled, my voice cracking, surprisingly loud in the stillness. "Who are you?" The figure didn't stir. Not a flicker, not a ripple. I tried again, louder this time. "What are you doing?" Still nothing. He was a perfect, unyielding monument to creepiness. A chilling thought occurred to me. The way he just stood there, so still, so unnaturally present. Was he fishing, or was he waiting? And if he was waiting, for what, or for whom? I swallowed hard, my mouth suddenly dry. I remembered stories, old tales whispered on the docks about things that lived in the deepest parts of the creeks, things that came out only at night, things that weren't quite human. I looked down at my fishing line, still in the water, a thin thread connecting me to the murky depths. What if he wasn't after fish? What if he was after something else? Something on this bank? My gaze drifted from him, across the dark, still water, towards my own feet. The water on my side of the bank was now shallow, revealing the muddy bottom. And then I saw it. Just at the edge of the water, half buried in the exposed mud, was a small, white, plastic bobber. One I'd lost last week. My blue fishing line was still attached to it, stretching taut, leading directly into the deeper water. And as I followed the line with my eyes, a horrifying realization struck me. It wasn't leading to the creek bottom. It was leading, impossibly, directly towards the motionless figure in the mangroves. He hadn't been fishing. He'd been connected. To me. I screamed, a strangled sound that tore from my throat. I yanked my rod back with all my might, snapping the line. I didn't care about the hook, the fish, anything. I just needed to break the connection. I scrambled back, tripping over my tackle box, my heart hammering like a trapped bird. I didn't bother packing up. I jumped on my bike, pedaling furiously, not looking back. The drone of the bridge felt like a monstrous roar, chasing me. I never went back to that spot under the King Street Bridge. I still fish, but only in daylight and never alone. And every time I pass over that bridge in a car, I instinctively look down, my eyes drawn to the dark patch of mangroves. I never see him during the day, but I still wonder, late at night, if he's still there. Standing perfectly still, his rod dipped into the impossibly deep water, waiting for another line to connect. The county fair was always a sensory overload, a vibrant assault of sticky sweet cotton candy, tinny carnival music, and the roar of delighted screams from impossible heights. I went every year with my best friend, Chloe, a tradition since we were kids. This year, we'd skipped the tilt-a-whirl. My stomach isn't what it used to be, but hit up the classic strength test, gorged ourselves on fried dough, and spent a ridiculous amount of time trying to win a stuffed alien at the ring toss. We'd stayed until the lights of the fairgrounds blurred into a dazzling, chaotic symphony, eventually making our way through the thinning crowd, laughing about our failed attempts to impress a carny with our non-existent throwing skills. I distinctly remembered our route, the main thoroughfare, past the giant slide, a quick detour for corn on the cob, then straight out the west gate to my car. We hadn't gone near the main midway where the biggest rides, including the towering Ferris wheel, stood. I had a slight fear of heights anyway, so it was a part of the fair I actively avoided. Later that night, back in my quiet apartment, the lingering scent of popcorn and diesel fuel clung to my clothes. I was unwinding on the couch, scrolling through social media, when my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. The text message simply read, "You smiled at me near the Ferris wheel." I frowned. Unknown number. And the content was immediately off. I hadn't been near the Ferris wheel, ever. At least not today. I probably just got a spam text or a wrong number. I deleted it and thought nothing more of it. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. "I liked your blue top. It matched your eyes." My stomach tightened. My blue top. It was true, I was wearing a periwinkle blue tank top, and people often commented on my eyes, but the Ferris wheel detail still bothered me. This wasn't a generic spam message. This was someone who had seen me, and they were wrong about where. I typed back, "Wrong number." I wasn't near the Ferris wheel. Almost instantly, a reply came through. Oh, but you were. Just for a moment you caught my eye. A cold prickle ran down my arms. This person was insistent and creepy. My mind immediately went to the thousands of people at the fair. Anyone could have seen me. But why pick me out, and why lie about the Ferris wheel? Was it a test, to see if I'd correct them? I decided to block the number. It was just a weirdo, probably harmless, but annoying. I didn't want to engage further. The next morning, I woke up feeling slightly on edge. The fair felt a little less innocent in hindsight. I went about my day, but every time my phone buzzed with an unknown number, I felt a jolt of anxiety. None were him. That evening, as I was making dinner, my phone buzzed again. A new, unknown number. My heart leaped into my throat. You have a lovely laugh. I heard it when you were trying to win the alien. My hands froze over the chopping board. The alien. That was specific and true. Chloe and I had been practically howling with laughter at my abysmal ring toss skills. This wasn't a wrong number. This was someone who had been watching me. And they knew where I had been, even if they were still insistent on the Ferris wheel lie. I felt a surge of anger mixed with fear. Who was this, and why were they doing this? I typed a terse reply. Stop texting me. I'm calling the police. The reply was immediate, chillingly calm. You didn't go near the Ferris wheel. Are you sure? I saw you. My blood ran cold. The insistence on the Ferris wheel was almost as unsettling as the fact that they knew about the alien. It was like they were trying to gaslight me to make me doubt my own memories. Or, worse, they knew something I didn't. I called Chloe. Did we go anywhere near the Ferris wheel yesterday? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. No, why? She replied, sounding confused. You hate heights. We cut across the back to avoid all the big rides, remember? Yeah, that's what I thought, I mumbled. I told her about the texts. She was horrified, suggesting I block them all and go to the police. I blocked the second number, but a knot of dread had firmly settled in my stomach. For the next few days, the texts continued, always from a new number, always appearing just as I started to relax. Your hair smelled like strawberries when the breeze lifted it near the food stalls. I use strawberry shampoo. You looked so thoughtful watching the pig races. I had watched the pig races. The small mole on your neck is very charming. A detail I rarely thought about, barely visible unless you were close. Each text contained a new, precise observation about me, coupled with the increasingly maddening assertion about the Ferris wheel. You looked up at the lights. I saw your face illuminated. You smiled right at me. I started checking my windows, double-locking my door. Every shadow felt like a lurking figure. Every car that passed slowly felt like a potential threat. I was becoming paranoid. I even went to the police, but without any physical threat or a clear identity, they couldn't do much beyond advising me to keep blocking the numbers and to be careful. They told me it was likely an infatuated admirer who was too shy to approach me at the fair, but it didn't feel like admiration. It felt like something much darker. One evening, I was alone, trying to distract myself by watching a movie. My phone buzzed. New number. My heart leaped. I'm still here at the fair. I saw you leave. You got into a white sedan. My car was a white sedan. This wasn't just someone who saw me at the fair. This was someone who knew where I lived. My hand trembled as I typed, "How do you know that?" The reply came. No words, just a photo. It was a blurry, grainy photo, taken from a distance, looking down. It was my white sedan, parked in the fairground lot, and in the foreground, unmistakable, was the distinctive giant wheel of the Ferris wheel, its colorful lights a blur. And then another text. I saw you get in. I was above you, just as I always am. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The Ferris wheel. He wasn't lying about me being near it. He wasn't trying to trick me. He was at the Ferris wheel. He was on the Ferris wheel. And from that height, he could see everything. He had been watching me from above, charting my movements across the fairgrounds, following my path as if I were a tiny, unwitting pawn on a map. The blue top, the laugh at the alien toss, the strawberry shampoo, the pig races, the mole on my neck. He had seen it all from his perch, high above the chaotic fair, watching me with a predatory patience. He saw me get into my car, tracing my movements until I was just a speck driving away. And the smile. You smiled at me near the Ferris wheel. I hadn't smiled at him. I hadn't even known he was there. But from his perspective, high above, perhaps he had seen me smile at Chloe or at some silly carnival game and interpreted it as a smile for him. Or perhaps the truth was even more disturbing. He had simply imagined it. I dropped my phone. The fair was supposed to be fun, innocent, but it had been a hunting ground. And I had been the prey. The thought that someone had been silently watching me from that towering, brightly lit structure for hours while I was completely oblivious was more terrifying than any direct threat. I changed my phone number the next day. I moved apartments a month later, too unnerved to stay in a place he knew. I avoid county fairs now, and every time I see a Ferris wheel, whether in a movie or simply in the distance, I feel a shiver of pure dread. Because I know now that from its heights, unseen eyes can watch and follow and never quite let go. And sometimes, the scariest things are the ones you didn't even know were there until it was too late.